An entitled racist Karen makes some outlandish statements after she calls our call center just trying to cause some havoc. But the management team was not having it, as this entitled Karen was put in her place in a beautiful fashion. And after that, she never called our office ever again. Here's what happened. So almost 20 years ago, I worked the 1-800 support hotline for my country's government financial aid for college applications. It gave me lots of memories of Karens and their outrageous claims, as well as their crazy demands. But the lady in this story that I'm going to share was the boss of all Karens. So literally anyone could call this number, but we could terminate the call if they got aggressive or combative, or were obviously not calling in good faith unless they had an application on file for the current year, in which case we had to listen to whatever they said the whole time. We could escalate the call to a supervisor only if they started making explicit comments that would be considered an aggressive move. But the entitled boss Karen of this story, she came prepared. I found out later that she had filed an application every year, despite having no children or intentions of attending college herself at the age of 68. As she put it to me, she is a taxpayer and therefore pays my salary, and therefore she is entitled to take up as much of our time as she well pleases. But before I go any further, I just want to say that this lady really was awful. She made some awful comments and generalization based on groups of people, and it really was a terrible experience overall. So it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and my supervisor gave me a heads up that more crazy people call on this day because we're the only government line that's actually open. I'm an hour or two into the morning, and the call beeps through into my headset. So I start out with my normal greeting. I say to them, "Thank you for calling, my name is such and such. To get started, I'll need your social security number so we can pull up your application." And yes, asking for this in the opener did cause us a lot of grief, but the script is the script. This entitled Karen snarls out her numbers with the kind of enunciation that we all become familiar with from YouTube videos of rabid boomer Karens confronting minimum wage employees over mask requirements. So it's not like I don't know the call was going to be a nightmare, but I was young and I was so naive, and I truly had no idea what I was getting into with this entitled Karen. I pull up her file, and at the same time that I asked her what we can do for her today, I see that the file iteration number is at 99. That's the top limit, meaning that she has called about that year's application at least 99 times in the last month alone. She answers by saying, "What you can help me with is what I demand to know. Why is it that I can't cash my check today, all because some stupid uppity got himself shot?" Now, when she said this, I just sat there stunned with a slight stammer, and my supervisor must have seen my face because she comes over, glances at my screen, and says, "Oh yeah, I was hoping I would get this lady today. Send her to me." I say in my best bright and helpful customer service voice, "Ma'am, that is a very good question, and that deserves to be addressed by someone higher up than me. Would you mind if I send you over to my boss?" You can hear her over the phone as she huffs and puffs, stating that yes, I can transfer her, but that I'd better not put her on hold forever. So I hit the transfer button with glee, and I logged my break code to go watch the show go down. My supervisor, as well as every other supervisor on contract, aside from one other white woman who was gone that day, was a college-educated black woman who tolerated no BS. So it didn't take long until this entitled Karen demands to speak with her boss. My supervisor says very sweetly, "Would you like to speak directly with the executive in charge of this entire call center?" And of course, the entitled Karen can't resist that sort of bait. Our executive director, of course, spoke fluent corporate, and his English was flawless. Usually, he retained only a hint of his African accent, but for special occasions, he would dial it all the way up. I would have given anything to listen in on that conversation, but all I got to hear was a bunch of laughter, and there was a lot of that, and it started well before the call ended. While I never did have to deal with that Karen again, when she quit calling us, she switched over to the Medicare line, and they already had enough to deal with. But I like to think the shock and outrage knocked a few years off of her useless, miserable life, and honestly, I'm so glad that my manager put her in her place. What an absolute serious piece of garbage. Like, this lady is just straight up racist. There's no other way of putting it. The fact that she would say that on the specific day that this incident took place is more than enough proof of this lady's ignorance. I mean, there is no good excuse to act that way, and this lady seriously should be ashamed of herself. So good for management for putting her in her place, because this type of behavior is absolutely atrocious, and there is no excuse in the book that would ever excuse this entitled Karen's actions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend has cheated on me in the past, and now I'm having trouble getting over it, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I moved in together after 9 months. It's now coming up to a year of us being together, and for some background, I was previously married and split with my husband before we got together, but have had boyfriends in the past. My boyfriend, on the other hand, has only had one girlfriend who was a bit older, and they were only together for about 6 months in 2021. Around 6 months into our relationship, I went on his phone while he was showering and saw he still had Tinder downloaded. I looked and I saw that he didn't have any messages, but was worried that he had cheated on me. So I decided I would bait him and made a fake Tinder profile. That night, he matched with me and messaged implying that he would like to hook up and started planning a day. After about 10 minutes, the messages stopped, and when I confronted him, he said he wasn't thinking with his brain, and when he snapped out of it, he stopped. He apologized profusely, and we talked about what he could do to earn my trust back, which included outlining what cheating was, and that included exchanging pictures or chatting with someone else. He also reassured me that it wasn't my fault and that he was an idiot, and I finally began trusting him again when we moved in together. The day after I moved in, I was being snoopy again, and I looked on his phone. I found kick messages where he was doing very inappropriate things, as well as interacting with people in a way that was incredibly uncomfortable and quite disgusting, and it makes me very uncomfortable. In some of the messages, he also exchanged pictures and videos, which really hurt, as we had set this as a no-go boundary. So when I talked about it, I was so sad that he decided the rules on what cheating was. He was very sorry again and said that it wouldn't happen again. Now, it happened a few times the week before, but it seriously did not get to him. I asked if he felt guilty, and he said that he felt guilty that I was hurt, but not guilty about doing it, because he didn't intend on actually cheating on me. Recently, he was on his phone, and I was next to him, and I saw his browser history, and just to keep things family friendly, it was basically scandalous sites that also allowed you to hook up with other people. Now, this was playing on my mind, so a few days later, I asked him to log in so I could check, and there were no messages in his inbox. But I'm still not convinced that he hadn't been deleting stuff, as he's been doing that since I caught him last time. I start therapy next week, and I'm hoping that will help. I don't know whether the feelings of not being enough and the lack of trust and paranoia will ever go away, or if I should just break up with him. I have trust issues anyways, and nothing in my life has ever crushed me like this before. Plus, I'm well aware he's a good liar, and he's good at hiding things, so that makes it worse. I just feel absolutely devastated and broken. I also feel bad for not getting over it, even though it's been a few months, but I'm still so hurt. Other than this, he is my absolute hero. He always puts me first, and he cares for me so much. It's the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. What boundaries can I set, and what conversations can we have to help me get over this? What should I do? I hate to say it, but this is not a healthy relationship. I mean, he has cheated on you twice. There's nothing healthy about this in the slightest, and it really does sound like you are in denial, because I hope you realize that this guy is basically shopping around online and getting with other people. There were also some pretty disturbing things that happened in this story that I left out on purpose for obvious reasons, but needless to say, this guy is not being faithful to his girlfriend, and I seriously think the original poster needs to wake up and see what's actually happening. No amount of therapy is going to stop what he is actively doing to you, and the sooner you realize that, the better off you will be. You do not deserve this kind of relationship, because from what you've described, your boyfriend is not faithful. So hopefully you can figure this out, because his attitude and his actions are incredibly disgusting, and you truly deserve much more than that. My coworker pushes aside a table ready to be seen at the restaurant that I work at, claiming that she can simply take the next one, as she takes her time to put on her makeup in the morning in the bathroom. But she doesn't realize what she's done, as I serve one of the richest members of our community, and as a result earn a fantastic tip that left everybody jealous. Here's what happened. So a couple of years ago, I was waiting tables at this restaurant in New Jersey. This story took place during our slow season, and it was pretty competitive between all the servers. Every server wanted the better section and the bigger tables, since overall, tips were lower than usual. We didn't pull our tips, and things got pretty cutthroat at times. I was doing okay financially, so I wasn't as money hungry as everyone else. I personally get anxiety, so I hate being late to things. So if my shift starts at 5, I'm walking into work at 4:45, just so I can get settled, and then clocking in at 5 o'clock o'clock to get to work. But my coworker Kayla, however, had a different attitude. She would walk into work at 5 o'clock on the dot and clock in and then head right to the bathroom to put on her makeup, which took her about 15 minutes. On most days, it was slow enough that it wasn't an issue, but it still wasn't right. Call me old-fashioned, but when your shift starts at 5, you should start working at 5 o'clock and not apply makeup while on the clock while you have other duties to take care of. I've never had to deal with putting on makeup, but it just seemed to me that she should have taken more time while getting ready to come to work to put it on. I always let it slide because I'm non-confrontational, but it bothered other coworkers. However, management never got around to addressing it. One day, I walked in at my usual time, and as I clocked in at 5, I saw Kayla clock in as well and scurry off to the bathroom. I roll my eyes and I walk to the host station, where there are 2 people waiting to be seated. The host asked if Kayla was here yet because she was up for her first table in the rotation. I told her she was getting ready in the bathroom. The host rolled her eyes and went to tell her she was going to get sat. Now, we all knew that she was putting on her makeup, and we weren't going to hassle her if she was on the toilet or something like that. I didn't hear the exact back and forth that they had, but it definitely took longer than I expected. The last thing I heard Kayla say was to just hand off this table and that she will get the next one. She didn't care. So the host sauntered back to me with a big grin plastered against her face. She said to me, "You're up for this table. Do you want to help me set it up?" And at this point, I'm confused. Set it up? It's only 2 people. And that's when she says something that absolutely blows my mind. She says, "Oh no, it's a party of 14. This is Mr. Moneybags' niece and nephew. The rest of the family is on their way." For context, Mr. Moneybags, this is obviously not the real name, was a very wealthy and well-known man in our area. He made his fortunes in landscaping and then moved on to real estate. And believe it or not, he was one of the few affluent people in our area that wasn't super entitled. Me and the host set up the table in record time. Just as the rest of the party arrived, everyone began to sit down as I greeted everyone. And just as luck would have it, I gave Mr. Moneybags a handshake as I locked eyes with a very dolled up Kayla as she entered the dining room and realized what she had done to herself. The next 2 hours, I waited on my 14 top table as Kayla waited on 2 tops. She actually had a table not tip at all, which is awful and I don't condone, but in this particular situation, I found it kind of fitting. And of course, she kicked herself again when she looked over at my table's check and saw the fat tip I was getting off of my big table. But you know what? That's her loss. And the moral of the story is that you need to get ready for work before work and not right when you show up. This is a fantastic story. I love it when situations like these arise because you know what? This is absolutely Kayla's fault. She could have made so much money off of that table, but instead she was too busy in the back trying to put on her makeup at the last second when in reality, yes, she very easily could have done that at home. She has literally nobody else to blame except for herself. Whereas the original poster saw the opportunity and was there ready to take care of what needed to be done. And that is honestly what it's all about. You strike while the iron's hot and you show up right when you're needed. And who knows, when you do that, you might just get a 14 top table and make a lot of money as a result. So it's really cool that the original poster is a valuable employee. And because of their hard work, they were able to make a fantastic paycheck, all because their coworker Kayla was too lazy to get her makeup done before coming to work. My father is constantly bothering me and is weirdly obsessed with me as an individual, constantly trying to drag me back into his life, despite the fact that I never want anything to do with him ever again. And at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So to start things off, I don't like my dad. I answer his phone calls because he treats his body horrible, and I know one day it will be his last phone call. I wouldn't answer otherwise. I know it's bad, but it's just how I feel. My parents divorced 15 years ago. He convinced me my entire life growing up that my mom was the reason for all of his problems, and that she was an overall horrible person. I believed him and looked up to him a lot. I'm not sure how, but I finally started realizing that he was full of it. I really dislike him for how much he manipulated me when I was young. He knew that I admired him a ton, and he ate it up and absolutely used it to his advantage. He still bashes my mom all the time, saying things like, "I haven't gotten sleep since your mom and I divorced," as well as claiming that he was always in shape, that is until mom left, and even telling me he has dreams about them being back together, like a lot, and it's extremely weird. He's also always been far too interested in my body, noting to me how I've developed into an adult and other highly inappropriate things. My father is not a good person, and he is by all definitions a creep, as well as extremely close-minded based on people's race and gender. He has mostly been single, with a few girlfriends here and there. And based on the way he acts, it's pretty clear why. I stopped staying with my dad at all when I turned 18 years old. He threw constant fits about me not wanting to stay with him at his disgusting house, where I would have to clean up after him and use dish soap just to try and wash my hair. One day, I told him he was just going to have to grow up and get over it. I now live with my mom. I don't like carrying a million things back and forth because I never had anything I needed at my dad's. He left me about 50 text messages and 20 calls that day, all of which I ignored. This wasn't the first time he had done this either. He's been obsessed with me for a long time, treating me like his wife and making his problems my problems since I was very young. I've always felt like I've had to take care of him. Now that I've moved out and gotten married, it's hardly changed. He keeps track of how long it's been since we've seen each other. He would say stuff like, "You know, it's been 2 months since I've seen you, right? When you move back here, I will see you a lot more." It's also constant calls, wanting to talk about nothing for hours. Like I've said, he treats me like I'm his girlfriend or his wife. He's also the biggest drama queen I've ever met. He treats his life like he lives in a movie. It's just the way he thinks and talks. It's very hard to explain, but it makes him unbearable to be around. I don't know what to do about him. I don't want to talk to him or even be around him. My husband hates being around him. Everyone other than his family hates being around him also. He had a heart attack last year, and that's why I've kept up any relationship at all. He doesn't treat himself any better to prevent another one, so it's hard to feel sympathetic. I just know that he's due for another one anytime. In fact, I went on vacation just last week, and a few days before, my dad called saying he's been thinking about going to the ER because he's been having chest pains and having trouble breathing. He has been having these symptoms since around June of last year, and he decided a few days before our vacation that he had known about this for several months, just to finally consider going to the doctor for it. He told me that he didn't want to worry me, and he felt bad getting in the way of our vacation. In other words, he was expecting that if he went to the doctor, that we would not go on our vacation and visit him instead. He seriously expected us to cancel our non-refundable vacation that he's known about for a while. He never ended up going to the doctor, so the call was purely to be dramatic and worry me for the entirety of our vacation. What brought me onto this post is that my dad is having some kind of procedure done to figure out why he has trouble breathing, but I can tell you exactly why. It's because he doesn't eat healthy, he doesn't get regular exercise, and he is an alcoholic. He's been telling doctors he doesn't drink or eat bad. He wants me there at this non-life-threatening procedure an hour away from where I live. Allegedly, his much more adult sisters will be there too. He's making me the primary person the doctor asks on what to do with him despite me saying I didn't want to be. And I don't even think that's needed for this type of procedure. I'm tired of doing stuff just to please him, as well as doing stuff just so he won't throw a fit. I don't need to be at this procedure because I'm not his wife. He's just got this creepy attachment to me that I just simply hate. I don't want to be around him ever, and at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So your dad is absolutely awful. I mean, his behavior in this situation is not only disgusting and incredibly inappropriate, it's just downright manipulative. I mean, really look at the facts here. This guy does not need you there so that he can go to the doctor. He's clearly just playing you. He's guilt-tripping you and trying to drag you back into his life, despite the fact that you're married and you've moved on with your own life away from this man. I mean, let's look at the facts for a second. He gaslighted you as a child to convince you that your mom was a terrible person. He's been obsessed with you for years and basically doesn't want to let you go. And now he's using his health against you just to try and guilt trip you into doing what he wants. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. So honestly, I would not put up with this for a second. If I was in your shoes, I would set up some clear boundaries and explain to him that no, you do not want to be in his life and that you are not going to be involved in his medical procedures. Because think about it for a second. He has spent your entire life manipulating you, and he probably enjoyed the admiration that you showed towards him all throughout your childhood. And he is now probably desperately trying to claw that back into his life by using his health against you. And truly, you do not deserve this kind of behavior. You haven't done anything wrong, and you deserve peace and freedom from this absolute narcissist. So hopefully you're able to set some kind of boundaries, or if anything, just drop him off completely, because this man is clearly manipulative, and he is not a kind person, and he seriously, in my opinion, does not have your best interest in mind. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius? Check it out in the description below and subscribe.